Yo, once again, it's on. Back at you one more again, Real Kens TV and the House Like Kitchen Sinks. Hopefully you like the video. Feel free to comment. Definitely share. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And be sure to hit that post notification. So anytime I bring you this action and this heat, guess what? You're amongst the first to receive. Now, with no further ado, let's get into this evening's video, if you will. It's 11 o'clock p.m., just getting off work. Check my emails earlier this afternoon, as I typically do. Real Kens TV at yahoo.com. Say, Real Kens, we often hear you reference the feds and the state. Could you please let us know the difference between the two? There's a huge difference between going to the feds and going to the state. Now, when I say going to, meaning serving time. Now, fortunately for myself, I've never been to the feds. I know I was definitely on the feds' radar, and thank goodness, I didn't make it. You see what I'm saying? But I definitely can tell you everything about the state, and I can tell you some things about the feds, just things that I read up on and people that I know that have been to the feds. There's a tremendous difference between the feds and the state, because when you're going against the state, it's whatever state. So I'm in Kentucky, so it's the Commonwealth of Kentucky versus Real Kens. Now, when you're in the feds, it's the United States versus Real Kens. It's the government. So it's a tremendous difference. The state cases tend to not be as solid, if you will, as a federal case. Now, when I say that, meaning the state will charge you with anything. They catch you doing anything, they're just going to charge you. And the thing about it, they're going to throw the book at you. So as many charges as they can get, that's what they're going to do. Now, when I say throw the book, I mean, say an individual gets pulled over, right? Okay, you get pulled over. You have a gun. You have some drugs on you. And that's pretty much it. Okay, well, when they pull you over, they're going to charge you with, and let's just say you're a felon. I can't leave that part out because that makes a big difference. So, you get pulled over, you got a gun on you, you got some drugs on you. They're going to charge you with trafficking, whatever drugs that you have. Let's just say it's cocaine, trafficking cocaine. Then they're going to charge you with trafficking within 1,000 yards of a school, because typically there's a school within 1,000 yards of damn near everywhere you go. Then, because you try to hide it or throw it out the window or get rid of it, they're going to charge you with tampering with physical evidence. Oh, you're a felon in possession of, if it's a firearm, you're facing 1 to 5. If it's a handgun, you're facing 5 to 10. Oh, you haven't been out of the system 5 years yet. You've been home 9 years, but you was on parole for 6 of those years. So the remaining 3 years, you wasn't on parole, but you have to be 5 years clear of the system. And this is in Kentucky. So now they're going to hit you with a sentence enhancement, which is called a persistent felony offender. So all of that, you're facing a life sentence. A small amount of drugs, a gun, and being a persistent felony offender. So you're facing a life sentence. You sit in the county for a while. You will and deal. And then when I say will and deal, meaning that your lawyer's going back and forth with the prosecutor or whatnot, you may end up with a 10, 12, 15-year sentence, in which in Kentucky you do 20% of your time, and then you go for parole. Well, you take that same scenario with the feds, and let's just say that exact same situation happens, but the feds step in and pick the case up. You're not going home for a long time, because there's not too much willing and dealing with the feds, as far as they have sentencing guidelines. So they look at your background, they look at what you're charged with, they look at and it falls within this certain level. It's a point system that they use. So everything that I just mentioned, you may fall within the guidelines of serving, and they also go by months. They don't go by years, but it's the same thing. So you may fall within the guidelines of 120 months on the low end, all the way up to life, all the way up to 360 months. And so they sentence you between it's at the judge's discrepancy, if you will, 120 months to 360 months. And I'm just giving you an example. He must follow those guidelines, mandatory sentencing. He must, mandatory minimums, rather. He must follow those guidelines. So he can't go in. I think that he actually can. But typically, if your mandatory minimum is 120 months, which is 10 years, that's the very least you're going to get. I don't think he can go in and be like, well, we're just going to give you 60 months. Now, I know it can drop a little bit as far as your mandatory minimum. Like if you take accountability, how quickly you take accountability for the, for your crime, what have you. And if you decide that you want to turn, I don't want to say state's evidence because it's not the state, it's the federal. If you want to become an informant or you want to work with them, maybe your levels drop. I don't know. Never done that, so I don't really know that side of how things work. So yeah, with the feds, man, you definitely don't want to catch a federal case. You don't want to catch any case, but you definitely don't want to catch a federal case because the state, like I said, a lot of times their cases are sloppy. They'll just throw charges on you. They'll just try to throw the book at you. And if you get a good enough lawyer, a lot of those charges end up dismissed. Maybe not the entire charge, but some of those charges end up dismissed. The feds, when they come for you, they know that they got you. That's why their conviction rate is almost 100%. Because not too many people go to trial with the feds. You're typically going to go ahead and plead out. Well, am I going to go to trial and get life or get, 30 or 40 years opposed to if I go on and just take this deal? I may not like the deal. I may not want to go serve 15 years, but it's better than me blowing trial and getting 40 or 50 because that's what's going to happen 9 times out of 10 with the feds. So the feds, when they come, they know. They know that they already got you. They're not coming with no foolishness. Their cases are already rock solid. So that's another difference with the feds. And this is in no particular order. I'm just, kind of freestyling, going off the top of my head. Oh, there's no parole with the feds. Well, there's parole in a sense, but you do 85% of your time. Now, in the state, it just depends on where you're at because you have some states, they don't have parole. As I mentioned, in Kentucky, as long as you're not sentenced under the violent sentencing guidelines, you do 15% of your time if you have 5 years or less. If you have over 5 years, you do 20% of your time, and then you go up for parole. So if you got a 15-year sentence and it's nonviolent, you do 3 years, you go up for parole. You might make it, you might not make it. You go before the parole board. Well, actually, you don't even go before the parole board. They review your file, and they say, well, they look at your history. They seen, everything that you've done since you've been incarcerated. Well, we don't want to let him out yet. Give him, 12 more months, and then we'll revisit the situation in 12 months. That's, typically how the states work. Now, I did mention that there are some states that don't have parole. So whatever time you get, that's the time that you do. But you're not getting those high football numbers that the feds are giving out. See what I'm saying? So, in the feds, you do 85% of your time. So if you got 30 years, you're going to do 85% of 30 years. Now, I know that they did pass something, I believe, earlier. Well, actually, it was last year, I believe. I forget exactly what it's called. But I know that certain inmates in the feds, I think it's called the First Step Act. Certain inmates in the feds, they're going to start to accumulate good time for like all the classes and schooling that they get when they're incarcerated. So instead of doing 85% of the time, I think that it's going to go down drastically. But that's only for certain crimes. I'd imagine that it's violence, anything sexual. I'd imagine that wouldn't apply. The feds, most of the time, you're not going to be in your home state. You could be anywhere. I'm in Kentucky, and the feds may send me to Oklahoma. I may be, California, Atlanta. There's no telling where I'll end up, in the feds. Now, I could be somewhere close by, West Virginia, which is, I think like 4 hours away, 3 or 4 hours away, or what have you. Then again, I might be in Kansas. When you're in the state, you're going to be within your state. They can't send you out of state because I'm a Kentucky inmate. So I'm going to be in Kentucky somewhere, which means 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be fairly close to home within, a couple hours. Now, there are some places out west that I have been, and they're 4, 5, 6 hours away from home. But typically, you're going to be within a couple hours away. Your family can come and visit you. Things of that nature. In the feds, you're not allowed to have your own TV. In the state, you can buy your own television. I'm trying to think. I think that's pretty much it as far as the difference between the two. As I mentioned, it's a tremendous difference. You definitely don't want to go to the feds. You don't want to go to either one, but you definitely don't want to go to the feds. Because you can definitely get lost in the system. You definitely can get lost in the system. You go to the feds, I've seen people, man, they done caught 35, 40-year sentences. You already 40, you already 36, 37, and you catch a fresh 25, 30 years in the feds, which you have to do 85% of that time, man, it's not even worth it. It's not worth it. And a lot of times they don't even really get caught with a lot. It's just that because of their criminal history, see, the feds have something that's called, it's a habitual offender, but it's called a career criminal. So say you get caught, it's your third gun case. They're going to hit you with a career criminal. Well, they could. It's your third violent case. Your third drug case. They can hit you with a career criminal, which basically means whatever sentence that you get, the career criminal goes on top. So let's just say you already get a 10-year sentence. And then they hit you with a career criminal. They could give you life. They could give you an additional 20 years, 15 years, just depends on it's at the judge's discrepancy. So it gets very, very scary with the feds. Situation that I had, and I've told you all about it, prior video. It was 14, 15 of us on the indictment, something like that. I don't remember the exact number. And the detective was on the stands. My lawyer chose to put the detective on the stands at one of my court proceedings. We were trying to have the case, thrown out or what have you. And my lawyer asked the detective, why did you tell my client that his case was going to go federal? The detective basically said, well, not basically, the detective pretty much said, we attempted to send this to the feds, but they didn't want the case. They rejected it. It was a weak case. They hit me with an organized crime case. Had me at the top of they literally had a board. Had my picture at the top, then 2 people underneath me, then like 4 people underneath them as recruiters, and it's crazy. It was totally bogus. It definitely wasn't true. They made it as though we were sitting at a round table and, our business was organized. And it definitely wasn't like that whatsoever. However, that's what the state will do. They will definitely try to make it seem way, way worse than what it really is. So as I was mentioning, they attempted to send the case to the feds. And luckily for myself, the feds didn't want it because in the feds, crimes in cahoots. That's what they call it. Crimes in cahoots. They sentence you much worse because the likelihood of a crime being complete, if there's several people in on the crime, is higher. So your sentencing guidelines are higher. So if I got 14, 15 people on my indictment, 13 or 14 additional people, along with myself, and the majority of the people, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3, are all pointing the finger at me, how am I going to beat that? The feds would have gave me forever and a day. Even though it was a financial crime, they would have gave me forever and a day. Based upon my record, my priors, the exact same charges, all these people testifying against me, all the money that was lost by the businesses, and man, I'd still be in the feds right now. And this was, wow, this was some years ago. This was some years ago. I want to say 2000 and I really don't even remember, 2006, somewhere right around there. I would probably still be in the feds right now had they picked that case up. So when you hear people say, oh, well, the feds, now you at least have a little insight as far as the difference between the two. You know, I hear people all the time say, oh, man, feds don't have jurisdiction. Man, the feds can do whatever they want to do. For instance, if a person gets caught with a gun, right? You get caught with a gun and it's a solid case. It's solid. Sometimes the charge remains in the state. Sometimes the feds come along and pick it up. Look at the rapper Lil Boosie, if you all familiar with him. He got caught in San Diego with a gun. The state picked it up. Or the state charged him. He was going back and forth to court. One day he goes to court. They dropped the charges. Lil Boosie, he's thinking he's celebrating and everything. He's thinking that, he's beat the state because they dropped the charges. As soon as he walks out the courtroom, federal agents turn around, put your hands behind your back. The feds picked the case up. So the state dropped it, knowing that the feds were going to come in and pick it up. The feds wanted Lil Boosie. Sometimes the feds, and you don't have to be a famous rapper, sometimes the feds want the case, and sometimes they don't. I don't really understand that part, because I've seen plenty of people get caught with multiple guns, and they remain in the state. Then I've seen people get caught with one gun. The feds come along, and they pick the charge up. I don't know why. I don't have a clue why. But it happens that way. And then once the feds, like I said, they come in and pick up the charges, a lot of times you're not going to get a bond with the feds. Some people get bonds. That's another thing I don't understand. Some people get bonds, but most people with the feds, you're not going to get a bond. So you're just going to sit in the jail for however long that your case lasts, until they send you off to wherever you're going to, go and serve your time at. With the state, at least you get a bond. Now, you may not be able to make the bond, but you'll have a bond. Unless it's something, like I said, very violent, or, a murder or something like that. So, it's just, like I said, I'm always reiterate, it's best to just stay out of the mix totally. There's a big, big difference between them feds and between a state case. So hopefully I've been able to break it down for you, give you a little bit better insight, the feds versus the state. Just got me nervous even thinking about it. Hopefully you liked the video. Feel free to comment. Definitely share. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. And be sure to hit that post notification. So anytime I bring you this action and this heat, guess what? You're amongst the first to receive. Real Kens.